أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum everyone.
So we will be continuing the reading from the words, the 23rd word, second chapter, and we were on the third paragraph from the second remark. I guess before we start off with the third paragraph, is there anyone who would like to summarize from our last reading the first two paragraphs of the second remark? Okay. If not, I can quickly try to summarize it, and apologies if I missed anything. So in the second remark, in the first two paragraphs, the author, again at a high level, covers the, I guess, two aspects of a human being. One concerning the ego, which basically points towards the transience of, or perhaps looks towards the transience of this life and is subjected to it. And the other, which basically concerns or is related to the side of the human being, or the aspect of the human being, which acknowledges the, I guess, existence of a creator. And that aspect looks towards perhaps mainly the eternal aspect of the existence of life and the things within it. I think that's at a high level, that was pretty much what we covered. So I will continue with the reading. Again, this is the 23rd word, second chapter, second remark. The link is in the chat. Third paragraph. Indeed, man resembles a seed. This seed has been given significant immaterial members by divine power and a subtle, valuable program by divine determining. The seed has been given significant immaterial members by divine power and a subtle, valuable program by divine determining, so that it may work beneath the ground, and emerging from that narrow world, enter the broad world of the air, and asking its creator with the tongue of its disposition to be a tree, so that it may work beneath the ground, and emerging from that narrow world, enter the broad world of the air, and asking its creator with the tongue of its disposition to be a tree, finding a perfection worthy of it. If, due to bad temperament, the seed uses the immaterial members given it in attracting certain harmful substances under the ground. So if due to bad temperament, the seed uses the immaterial members given it in attracting certain harmful substances under the ground, in a short time it will rot and decay in that narrow place without benefit. In that short time it will rot and decay in that narrow place without benefit. But if the seed conforms to the creational command of God is the splitter of the seed grain and date stone. This is a verse from Quran, I believe Surah 6 and verse 95. So the verse is, God is the splitter of the seed grain and date stone. So if the seed conforms to this verse and employs well those immaterial members, it will emerge from that narrow world, and through becoming a large fruit-bearing tree, its tiny particular reality, and its spirit will take on the form of an extensive universal reality. So if the seed conforms to the creational command of God as a splitter of the seed, grain, and date stone, and employs well those immaterial members, it will emerge from that narrow world, and through becoming a large fruit-bearing tree, its tiny particular reality and its spirit will take on the form of an extensive universal reality. Similarly, significant members and valuable programs have been deposited in man's nature by divine power in determining. Significant members and valuable programs have been deposited in man's nature by divine power in determining. If man uses those immaterial members on the desires of his soul and on minor pleasures under the soil of worldly life in the narrow confines of this earthly world, he will decay and decompose in the midst of difficulties, in a brief life, in a constricted place, like the rotted seed, and load the responsibility of his unfortunate spirit, then depart from this world. I'll repeat this again. So if a man uses those immaterial members on the desires of his soul and on minor pleasures under the soil of worldly life, in the narrow confines of this earthly world, he will decay and decompose in the midst of difficulties in a brief life, in a constricted place like the rotted seed, and load the responsibility of his unfortunate spirit, then depart from this world. If, however, he nurtures the seed of his abilities with the water of Islam and light of belief under the soil of worship and servitude to God, conforms to the commands of the Quran, and turns his faculties towards their true aims. So if the man or he nurtures the seed of his abilities with the water of Islam and light of belief under the soil of worship and servitude to God, conforms to the commands of the Quran, and turns its faculties towards their true aims, they will produce branches and buds in the world of similitudes and the intermediate realm. So they'll produce branches and buds in the world of similitudes and the intermediate realm. He will be a seed of great value and a shining machine containing the members of an everlasting tree and permanent truth, which will be the means to innumerable perfections and bounties in paradise. He will be a seed of great value and a shining machine containing the members of an everlasting tree and permanent truth, which will be the means to innumerable perfections and bounties in paradise. And he will be a blessed and luminous fruit of the tree of the universe. Yes, true progress is to turn the faces of the heart, spirit, intellect, and even the apologies for that. Yes, true progress is to turn the faces of the heart, spirit, intellect, and even the imagination and other subtle faculties given to man towards eternal life, and for each to be occupied with the particular duty of worship worthy of it. Progress is not as the people of misguidance imagine. Progress is not as the people of misguidance imagine, to plunge into the life of this world in all its minute details, and in order to taste every sort of pleasure, even the basest, make subject to the evil commanding soul all the subtle faculties and the heart and intellect. Sorry, can you guys hear me okay? Because it seems like there's a lot of background noise behind me.
I can hear you.
You're okay.
Okay, apologies for that. So I'm just going to read this sentence again. Progress is not as the people of misguidance imagine, to plunge into the life of this world in all its minute details, and in order to taste every sort of pleasure, even the basest, make subject to the evil commanding soul all the subtle faculties and the heart and intellect, and make them assist it. To do this is not progress, it is decline. I saw this fact in a vision which is described in the following comparison. I was entering a large town when I looked and saw it was full of large palaces. At the doors of some of these palaces was merrymaking like a brilliant theater. It captured and held everyone's attention and was entertaining them. I looked carefully and saw that the lord of such a palace had come to the door. He was playing with a dog and assisting the merrymaking. The ladies were indulging in sweet conversation with ill-mannered youths. Grown-up girls were organizing the children's games, and the doorkeeper had taken the role of directing the others. I then realized that the inside of the huge palace was completely empty. Its refined duties all remained undone. The morals of its inhabitants had declined, so that they had taken on these roles at the door. I passed on until I came to another large palace. I saw that there was a faithful dog stretched out at the door, and a stern and taciturn, which means reserved or uncommunicative in speech, saying little. Okay. I'm going to read this again. I passed on until I came to another large palace. I saw that there was a faithful dog stretched out at the door, and a stern and taciturn doorkeeper. It had an undistinguished appearance. I was curious. Why was the other the way it was, and this palace like this? I went inside. Then I saw that the inside was very merry. Apartment over apartment, the people of the palace were busy with their different refined duties. The men in the first apartment were overseeing the administration and running of the palace. In the apartment over that, girls were teaching the children. Above that, the ladies were occupied with fine arts and beautiful embroideries. And on the top floor, the Lord was exchanging news with the king, and was busy with his own elevated duties in order to maintain the people's tranquility and his own attainments and progress. And the Lord was exchanging news with the king and was busy with his own elevated duties in order to maintain the people's tranquility and his own attainments and progress. They did not stop me, since I was not visible to them, and I was able to wander around. Then I came out and looked around. Everywhere in the town were these two sorts of palaces. I asked about this, and they told me, the palaces where there is merrymaking at the door and whose insides are empty belong to the foremost of the unbelievers and the people of misguidance. The others belong to the honorable Muslim notables. Then, in one corner, I came across a palace on which was written my name, Said. I was curious. I looked more closely, and I as though saw my image on it. Calling out in utter bewilderment, I came to my senses and awoke. And now I shall interpret this vision for you. May God cause good to come of it. The town was human social life and the city of man's civilization. The town was human social life and the city of man's civilization. Each of the palaces was a human being. The people of the palaces were the subtle faculties in man, like the eyes, ears, heart, inner heart, spirit, intellect, and things like the soul and caprice, and powers of lust and anger. Each of the man's faculties has a different duty of worship and different pleasures and pains. The soul and caprice and powers of lust and anger are like the doorkeeper and the dog. The soul and the caprice and powers of lust and anger are like the doorkeeper and the dog. Thus, to make the elevated subtle faculties subject to the soul and caprice and make them forget their fundamental duties is certainly decline and not progress. You can interpret the rest for yourself. Okay? I think we've read enough to discuss, and we can take a pause here. I guess, would anyone like to present their high-level understanding of what we've read so far before we dive into these paragraphs deep, paragraph by paragraph? Okay. I'll, I guess, try to initiate this, and if anyone would like to jump in, feel free to do so. At a high level, I mean, clearly we read a lot, so at a high level, it seems like the author is drawing our attention to these faculties that we have, and I think the author refers to them as sometimes immaterial members when the author is referring to the seed analogy. Basically, again, that we will become the result of what we basically draw to ourselves. So if we, as a seed, if we focus on the harmful substances and consume the harmful substances, then our end result will become of that, and that is that we will rot underground. We will, and I'm sure we can dive deeper into the analogy as well, in terms of what it means to be underground and out in the open. And I think the author also is drawing our attention towards the fact that these members, and the fact that there's this quote unquote valuable program, are things that are not of us, in the sense they're not from us, but that rather things that we find ourselves with or things that are given to us. And I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's what the author means when he says that this is given to or deposited in man's nature by divine power and determining. And I think the author, again, tries to draw our attention towards utilizing these immaterial members, and in a way where we're able to benefit from them and, see the perfection in our creation, by utilizing them, and become that quote unquote the luminous fruit of the tree of the universe. So I guess that's, in my opinion, that's the first half, and the second half is just a different analogy, when the author uses that town example, which personally I'm a little confused about. So I guess I wouldn't really have anything to add to that, but yeah. Anyone has any thoughts, questions, concerns so far? And being a moderator is tough. Okay. All right. So I guess since no one has any high-level thoughts, maybe we can start paragraph by paragraph, and address any questions that people have. Feel free to either press the raise your hands button or just speak up.
Qasim, I think people like doing this on purpose to make it more difficult for you.
Yeah, I think everyone gave Aisha Noor a very, very easy time last time, so this is not.
Yeah, that's the case. Like, so no one will reach her. So
Yeah.
I think you're just like, it's a setup.
No, alhamdulillah, I'm benefiting from a lot from the silence as I'm forcing myself to extract more and more meaning from these paragraphs. But hopefully someone else would like to benefit from this reading as well. So feel free to share your thoughts.
So, like, I think we should go paragraph by paragraph.
Inshallah. So yeah, the first paragraph, I'm trying to think if I have any questions. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just jump in and say, here's what I don't understand. But perhaps we can start off with focusing on where we should rely our emphasis on.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So last week, I remember towards the end, we didn't speak much about it, but we spoke a little bit about this paragraph of how the immaterial members that the author mentions can be understood as qualities that human beings have. I'm a little confused, and I don't know if this was touched upon before, but I'm a little bit confused about what Nursi might be trying to say by program, valuable program by divine determining. If anyone would like to talk about that.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to say? Or I can share what I think from it. All right.
I'm not sure if I have an answer, but I had the same question at the beginning when we started reading. So, like, obviously, the seed example is an analogy, and it's an analogy that, like, everyone experiences. Like, it takes place. That creation takes place in front of our eyes, especially like every spring. So, like, when the seed goes into a realm which is like dark soil, and it comes out as a beautiful flower in the realm of like air, let's say. And if you think about it, like seed versus the flower, like they quality-wise, they are very distinct and different from each other. So like, I guess like from the text, what I understand is like we are expected to like look into this like experience and use this analogy and relate it to ourselves and like understand what like the truth of like man's nature is. So I guess like the question is like, how do we really apply this analogy to like man himself?
Thank you for sharing, Usman. I think it's interesting too. The way I understood this was, I kind of rephrased valuable program and just swapped that word with like relationship. So, for example, the relationship that those immaterial members have with either. Well, they could have a relationship with one another, but that relationship that those immaterial members will have with me. So one is just acknowledging the existence of those things, which I think is why the author perhaps mentions by divine power. So power, in my opinion, is something which is required or necessitates the existence of power to bring something into existence. Versus the valuable program for me is that establishing some form of relationship of that immaterial member to this with the seed or to my existence, and that requires or necessitates the, I guess, requirement of a programmer, which I think the author clarifies by saying divine determining. So someone is quote unquote like determining the relationship that significant immaterial member will have with the seed, as far as the analogy goes. So how those qualities are going to, I guess, relate to my own existence. So there, like, even that is determined. So for example, if the quality might be anger, what is the relationship of anger to my existence? Am I supposed to use it or abuse it, right? Like that, I think, is what I understand from program. Does that, I guess, provide any insight, Aishanur? Or do you have any questions? Does anyone else have any questions?
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
I just wanted to add what I understand from Valuable Program by Divine Determining has to do with the conscious will, capital C conscious will. Just like an analogy, so let's say you go to a concert, let's say. So obviously, everything is set up. There has been like a deliberate setup in terms of the logistics and everything. And similarly, as far as I'm concerned as the human being, anything that I encounter or experience is perfectly designed and planned. And so tying this with what the author is saying as far as the seed is concerned. So I, as the human being, has to take care of my responsibility, which is to acknowledge that whatever I'm experiencing and encountering has been set up by the one that's bringing everything into existence. And so I just have to be in this acknowledgement. And yeah, that's what I understand.
It's very interesting that you use the word acknowledgement there. It's interesting because I'm saying it's interesting because right where it says so that it being the seed, aka a human, may work beneath the ground and emerging from the narrow world, enter the broad world of air, and asking its creator with the tongue of its disposition to be a tree. And I was questioning, like, how can I ask my creator, like to I guess how do I put this in any other way? Like if I see that I'm developing myself, or not myself, I'm developing as a human being, and I'm at level 10, how do I know that, how can I ask my creator that, like, excel me to level 15 if I don't know what level 15 is? And as I was questioning that, right after that statement, the author says, find a perfection worthy of it. And maybe I'm injecting my own understanding into this or trying to answer my question with that phrase. But what I understand from that is, again, it's acknowledgement. It's saying, okay, I am in need of wanting to, let's say, grow, right? I'm going to tie it into the seed analogy, pun intended. Like I'm in need to grow, and I may not know what my future state might look like. Like how is a seed supposed to know that it's going to grow out to be a tree? But the fact that it finds itself in need of growth, right? So AKA find a perfection worthy of it. It's like that is at its core, it's acknowledgement. So yeah, I think that was interesting.
I wanted to say a few things here, just to add on to what you all said. I agree with you. I just wanted to, Dr. Ali has a good term he uses, vertical versus horizontal relationship. And to me, this is what the essence of Qadar is, divine determining, in that, as Qasim said, we are given these faculties, these qualities. And to whom do we attribute, our feelings to, which are very fleeting, transient, very up and down, how we see the world. And you can either attribute it to the thing itself, your anger, to anger's sake, or to whatever is causing you to be angry, or causing you to be happy, or to your very feeling. That you can attribute the meaning of it to itself or to something external. But this is a horizontal relationship, and that is not what the program is, because not only is it necessary, but it is only possible for something to indicate something other than itself, or to indicate a divine source. And to so I think that is one thing I took away from this, that it's impossible to escape the meaningful aspect of things, the indicative aspect of something, and it's present in every sense, every feeling, and every moment one has with himself or herself, or with the outside world. The other thing I wanted to say was, I don't know how, this is maybe more personal, but I'm sure you probably all feel this way, in that, for example, I was at work. I came back from work, and just reflecting on it, anything you say, I feel like, or anything you do, is done in a very narrow sense, as Norsi puts it. It's as if I almost feel constricted by the world, because the secular aspect of this world, this civilization that at least I find myself in today, anything that is spoken or done is done in relation to that thing itself. So, I'm sure you all experience, but if somebody's talking about what they're going to do this weekend, they do it in a sense that's almost meaningless. It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. And I don't know if people realize it, but at least me personally, it's very constricting. This narrow world, as Nursi puts it, if one does not understand the subtle faculties and how they've been programmed, you do feel as if you've been bottled up. This world is a prison, whether you want to admit it or not, and whether anyone else wants to admit it or not, but it's unable to satisfy any human feeling one has. And the last thing I would add is that I think Nursi best sums this up in one part of the words where he says, I don't know the exact way, but the exact way he says it, but any word that is spoken that does not relate to the divine is not worth being spoken. And even any true word that is spoken can only be spoken in relation to the divine. Otherwise, it has no value. And to me, this is what this section reminded me of.
Thank you for sharing that. I had a follow-up question to your comment, and in two parts. So I guess when you said, when you were using the example of a vertical and a horizontal relationship, just for my clarification's sake, apologies if everyone else knows, I'm assuming that the horizontal relationship is basically the material aspect of things, or at its superficial level, and the vertical relationship of something is, I guess, if the horizontal is like just my relationship with what I'm dealing with, and the vertical relationship ends up being with identifying the source behind it, the who. My first part of that question, if this is the understanding, my first part of the question is, where does the why fall under all of this? So after acknowledging that, or after understanding and coming to the realization that there is a divine power behind it all, behind the qualities, I guess, as far as this text goes, or the existence of those qualities, I can acknowledge the source, but would you say that within that vertical horizon, the why is in there? Like, as I understand why am I given these qualities and question it more and more, other than just identifying the source behind it, I perhaps elevate in that vertical relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go into it. I mean, there is well, to answer your first question, yes. I mean, to give a very, common example, it's, at least today, you know, people tell me, I'm feeling sick. So what? It doesn't have any meaning. You feel sick, you feel healthy. It doesn't mean anything. It's a horizontal relationship with the world. Or I'm feeling hungry, I'll eat something. I mean, it doesn't, when you think about it, reflect on it, it has no substantive value to the human being in and of itself. It just looks to the animalistic, apparent, particle-like nature of the world. That's it. No meaning whatsoever. Even though, in a sense, they acknowledge meaning when in a way by saying, I feel sick, that's a meaningful statement because fundamentally it's a feeling or it's an perspective on the world. So but they don't, it's incomplete. Um, with regards to the other aspect, no, I agree. There's a stepwise. I mean, I was, didn't really, kind of jumped around, but yes, you acknowledge that one, there is something there beyond the particles themselves. There's a meaning, and then you ask yourself, how is this meaning there? How can it be attributed to this, or to whom should the existence of this meaning and the thing itself it's associated with be attributed to? And then you acknowledge a source, a one, and then you begin to understand who the source is through his manifestation of his qualities in this universe. And then you see, in that understanding, do you see what the purpose of existence is to use these faculties to know who he is. So that's the vertical relation to the stepwise approach. So, you acknowledge, I want good health. I'm sick, I'm ill, and I want good health. That's a meaningful statement. And then to understand that, yes, how do I explain this feeling? How do I explain the existence of this feeling? And why do I want health? Why do I not like sickness? How is this possible, existentially speaking? And then to say that, yes, I am given these qualities by a one, not of this nature of this universe. And what is the purpose in that the existence of that feeling is to know that he is the health giver, and that I'm given illness to know my impotence, my poverty, as Narcy says, my contingency, and that he is absolute, and that only he can provide me what I am in need of. So this is I think what the crux of the section was.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any thoughts, questions in terms of what is currently being said or the first paragraph?
I just wanted to add on, when we interact with the universe, obviously the first step is really you're interacting, what do you say? As the events are coming, like at a very surface level, but then obviously the questioning can lead you to connect, or when you try to seek the meaning of things, then you can make a vertical connection. So you're horizontally, we're like, journeying in, but then within that, when one seeks meaning and purpose of things, question whatever they're encountering, so then that's where the vertical connection lies. So you can't have one without the other, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was questioning this, I guess the later half of that paragraph, where it says, in a short time, it will rot and decay in that narrow place without benefit. It, again, being the seed, aka us, human beings. And I was having this internal conversation with myself and saying, okay, as a seed, how do I know that there is something beyond, the earth, or the dirt, basically. Like, again, as a seed, I feel like everything, like what gives me the evidence to say that there is something beyond the dirt. And again, I'll emphasize on the word that Fariha used earlier, acknowledgement, right? So if as a seed, as a human being, I guess personally speaking, if all I say is, you know what, all I need is, I don't know, car, job, money to pay bills, and just, a bunch of movies, personally a huge fan of movies, a bunch of movies to watch, and I'm happy, then even the universe, to my understanding, will satisfy your material needs. It will. So for a seed to grow within the ground, like beneath the surface of the ground, it would feel like it has enough place, but in acknowledgement of the fact that it has needs or desires that cannot be fulfilled in the universe. And that comes from understanding the seed better, not just the space around you. So it doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, like it has to start from within. It has to start with the fact that I need, again, sounds cliche, like this thing eternally. And then when you look at your surroundings and you say, okay, the surface beneath the ground is not enough for me. I am in need for something far greater, far more. And through that realization, one seeks that level of perfection. One seeks that level of understanding, which allows them to I guess that serves as evidence to say that this is not it, or this cannot be it.
No, you were saying, how does the seed know, or more fundamentally, how does one even know, have any semblance of, or any notion that there is something, there is a potentiality within him that he has not realized? It begs the question, and what is the role of prophecy and revelation? And to me, that is the essence of it. It is to educate man on what is within him, and yet he does not know. He is ignorant. He knows, but he does not know. He is ignorant of his potentiality. And that is why I think, at least I think this is why Nursi quotes this verse, is God is the splitter. So it is he who acts upon man to enlighten him, because without prophecy and without revelation and prophecy, man would not know his essentially infinite potentiality within him. So he is in need of not only having been given these qualities, the seed, but then having that same one who endowed him with innumerable ways to know him, for him to make himself known by him opening him up as well. So one cannot escape the act of creation, or really divine determining at any moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to that also what Suhail said, the verse that God is the splitter of the seed grain and the date stone, I think it also ties back to the first paragraph where he was talking about the two faces of man, one being the ego, which looks to the life of this world, and where man himself thinks that all these immaterial members or qualities that are given to man are a result of his own doing. That's what one face of the man's world is, right? And the other part is, as Suhail was mentioning, it puts it into perspective that all these members and all these immaterial qualities that a man sees in himself as and questioning them, then you, as a human, you get to realize and you get to appreciate, and as was mentioned about the word acknowledge, you get to do acknowledgement of the source that has given to you all those qualities. And I really like this analogy of the seed being like in the soil. So that's our world also, this universe that we are in. We are in this soil, we are struggling just like the seed is struggling, and it has the desire to shoot up and become a tree, but there are certain things that are into play for the seed. And there's the possibility for it not to grow and rot, right? And given that there's one thing that human beings have, which the seed does not have, and that is the free choice that human beings have, right? So we, in our world in the soil, we do have the ability to see and make choices and distinguish whether to go through one phase or the other phase. But here, like in the analogy, as Nursi puts it, he says, okay, if the tree uses all these immaterial members to go to, what did he say exactly? And using a bad temperament and misuses all the immaterial members and attaches to harmful substances, then definitely it will just stay underneath the soil. That's it. That's the life of the seed will not go outside of the realm of the soil. Similarly for man, if the members and the qualities are misused, then just like the seed stays within that, our life will also be within this realm and will not really go out of this world. And which is what he's referring to in terms of the paradise and what's the other thing he used? Basically the way you are while you're transitioning to paradise, the intermediate realm, as he says it.
Yeah, I have some questions, but I am not really able to formulate them in a meaningful statement. But let me just try. So, seed goes into the soil and comes out as a flower in the realm of air. So man is in the realm of this life as a seed, and he's gonna turn out to be something different in a different realm, right? Is that so in this case, like, does that realm like refers to the afterlife? If so, like, how do I really confirm that, like, here and now, like, as I actually, because like, if you think about it, you guys talked about meaning. If you think about it, like, we need that, whatever that meaning is, that makes this life more bearable. We need that, like, actually here, in this life. So, like, I guess the question is, how do we really accomplish to be a flower as we are actually like living this life in this realm? Or this is not what the author is talking about? I am misunderstanding him.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I spoke too much. You can speak.
So I was just going to put the question into within the text. I will try to locate the question. So I guess this one goes with the paragraph which starts with, if, however, he nurtures the seed of his abilities with the water of Islam and light of belief under the soil of worship and servitude to God, conforms to the commands of the Quran, and turns his faculties towards their true aims, they will produce branches and buds in the world of similitudes and the intermediate realm. So we are trying to understand what he means by this, right?
Yeah, then, like, can I just ask my second question? I think it's related. So then based on this paragraph that you refer to, does it mean that like whatever the meaning that we talk about or that we refer to, whatever it is, we should be looking for that in the servitude of God, in the worship? Like, in other words, for example, I am sick, like as Suhail was talking about. It's a statement that like gives you like your state of being, right? If on like from a secular perspective versus let's say the religious perspective, what makes like when you approach that like from the secular perspective, what makes it like meaningless? Or in other words, like if you look, approach from the religious perspective, what does it like make more meaningful?
Okay, I'll just increase the number of questions, maybe just to find an answer. So in here, he was giving the analogy of seed. So I am now trying to apply it. So seed, when I'm going to, I mean, since it's springtime, and if I would like to make tomatoes, I will put seed. And what would I do? I will pour water and try to have, there's a certain procedure that I need to take in order to get some plant out of the seed, right? So this is in a way, now I'm trying to make sense of the verse. God is the splitter of the seed. First of all, do I agree with this statement when it comes to tomato seed? And I think I can agree with that. I can confirm that actually it is the creator who takes the tomato plant out of tomato seed. I mean, there's the program, but he's the one that makes it. Then I look at myself, and as a human, I don't want to rot under the earth. I will die, and I'm going to rot. Actually, a friend which was doing his PhD at the time in biology, which you know personally, he was saying that it's really interesting that for other sort of living beings, they inherit the qualities. But when it comes to human, the knowledge that the human grows is not inherited to their son, genetically, whatever. This is why we have to write books, whatever, in order to transfer it. Otherwise, yes, with all our life experiences and everything, we get to the very maturity, and then we just go under the earth and rot, which is very purposeless, very absurd. It looks very absurd. So then it's a very essential question for me. How am I not going to rot? And again, then now I read this verse. This verse is saying that God is the splitter of seed. So in order to accept the truthfulness of this verse, it should be like I am a seed, and when there must be a way for me to get out of this seed, and the verse is saying that God is going to do that. But what does that mean? Then the author in there is saying that because when I was expecting the tomato plant, I didn't say, okay, God is going to take it out, so just wait and see. There was a way for me to put water and put it into a certain temperature, whatever. So now, in my case, what am I supposed to do? Then God is going to split it. What does that mean? So in here, now that I am trying to see what that nurturing the seed of abilities with the water of Islam and the light of belief under the soil of worship and servitude to God, and then confirming the commands of the Quran, then turn his faculties towards their true nature, true aims, they will produce branches and buds. So this is not
in the world of similitudes.
Yeah.
Wherever that place is.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I just stated the question. So what do people understand from this world of similitudes? I guess this is where now the question boils down to. What does it mean that human is flourishing or flowering in the world of similitudes and the intermediate realm? What does that mean?
So I think Burhan would like to say something.
So in the light of what Yusuf just said, I had some difficulties previously.
We don't take comments from you.
Oh, you're not taking comments from me?
No, you are not allowed.
Oh, okay. Sorry then. Sorry, I'm leaving my. I'm off, like turning.
I want to hear you.
Oh, okay. So I was having some difficulties understanding the first paragraph, how it related to others, and the very first question. It was, I guess, Qasim asked about the program. And then after comments, after all these discussions, so it seems that we all take a journey in our life. Like we see that from one state to another state, I go through. And regardless of your state, your attitude, this is true. Like even from a pure secularistic point of view, you always take a journey. Like you are just a single cell, and then you become a baby, and then a young adult, and then adult, and so on. Journey is always there, and you have some faculties, you have some members. Again, regardless of your state, believer, unbeliever, doesn't matter. We realize that we have some faculties, we have some potentiality. Like my mind, the way it works when I'm a baby, it's so different than how it works when I'm an adult. So there's a huge potential, there's a huge a change from one state to another state that I can reach, right? So there's always a progress. But when we look at this process, what is taking place, what's happening to me, just putting everything like in a short version without much detail. When I look at this process and try to make sense of like what's going on here, the point I reach without a belief perspective, or as the author says, without a light of Islam, what I reach, it's just I'm decaying, right? I'm starting from a single cell. I'm becoming a baby, something so fresh, something so young, and then I'm getting old, and then I die and literally get rotten, right? Literally decaying. So this journey, this process is nothing but decaying from an unbelief perspective. But when you realize that these potentialities, these members, these faculties are given, and there is a program that like from one state to another state you take. This is not just an arbitrary, like the jumps you make, they are not arbitrary jumps. They follow an order, they follow a program. Once you realize this, once you realize that there's a meaning behind all these steps, there's a meaning behind all these members, all these faculties. When you realize it is God that take you from one step to another step, as Yusuf was saying, it is God splitting the seed. It's not the seed that splits at one point. There is someone who splits the seed. There is someone who make our faculties or make our potentialities emerge. There is someone who takes me from one state to another state. So when I take the believer perspective, now the process is not a decaying anymore. I guess so we should try to answer the final question: what does it mean, the realm of similitudes, or what does it mean, the intermediate realm? From this perspective, like because the author is talking about two extremes, right? Becoming a tree or decaying. And personally speaking, I experience these two possibilities, like with every choice I make. And the way I see the tree as my final state versus I see getting old and then die and then decay as my final state. The difference between these two is definitely it's seeing that there is someone behind everything that I being true. Once I realize it is God that splits the sea, it is God that takes me from one state to another state, then I see the tree. And when I don't see that there's God, there's someone who splits the sea, then what I see is decaying. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, just a small addition to what you said, Birkan. I still not know what like the world of similitude is, but when you like read that paragraph and also like go back to the beginning of the second remark when he talks about like man's like nature in terms of being like having infinite uh, impotence and poverty. I think in its essence, like the gist of the worship is to understand your own impotence, so that through that you can understand the absoluteness of the Creator. I think that's really like what makes something meaningful for me, because knowing myself, like going through the struggles in life, and in many occasions, like being completely incompetent to manage the situations, brings me necessarily the conclusion that I need to rely on something or someone that is actually capable of doing that. And like all those like faculties that we are talking about, I think like somehow like must be referring to that point. Like on one hand, like we have those faculties and like which kind of looks to the like infinity. On the other hand, like we are completely impotent to fulfill the expectations or the needs, which like necessarily brings you to the conclusion, like a situation that like you look for some sort of like point of like solace. I think that what makes something either meaningful or not meaningful for me, like, and when it like refers to the like the light of Islam or like the border of Islam under the light of belief and following the commands of the Quran, technically what it means to me is that like Quran is there to teach like your nature to yourself in a way that you will understand yourself and like position yourself like and understand your location in relation to God and position yourself accordingly and establish that relationship that you can have that active relationship with Him. And like as far as I understand, that is what like the gist of the like prayer or the worship is, keeping that consciousness or reminding that like to you like at least 5 times a day, let's say.
And that's meaning for you?
That what makes something meaningful for me, like, or that what makes any experience that you may go through in life, that's what it would make like meaningful for me, because otherwise what you're like, if you don't have that understanding, what you're left with is like a world of contradiction. On one hand, like we have like needs and like faculties that is opened up to like infinity or eternity. And together with that, like you are completely impotent of like bringing that what for yourself. But at the same time, you are subjected to change and you are being decayed. So like, and if you take the first part, which was explained in the first paragraph of the second remark, you have two paths, right? Two like avenue. Either you will take the ego, or you will take the avenue of ego, or you will take the avenue of like worship. And like once you take like avenue of ego, like you have no other choice but like relying on yourself at all times. But like if you take that avenue, then again like you are going through those contradictions. And if you have like if you're going to contradictions in every single moment, how can it be really meaningful? What kind of meaning can you get out of it?
Can I ask a question though? Like, how is it meaningful to believe in God? I mean,
I don't.
no, I mean, no, I understand what you're saying. Finding meaning in this world is very difficult.
What are you trying to say? You are not Muslim?
Finding meaning in this world is difficult, but now I'm just trying to see. Okay, I want there to be a meaning. I want there to be purpose, but is it so clear that there's meaning in worshiping? Like,
what's the worshiping? I think like let's start from there.
Let's say there's this very powerful king, and you're in this kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you don't want to just go around just living on your own mind because you know that you're so weak and you're useless, so that's pointless. But then at the other hand, there's a very powerful king, and you're like, okay, I should go serve him, and that's going to be meaningful for me. But I could say, is it really that meaningful to go serve this king?
That's where the problem is. Like, what do you mean by serving?
I suppose when we worship, like in quotes, Allah,
we are serving him.
We're serving ourselves in some ways. Is that like
yeah, like if God is absolute and we are completely impotent, like how can we truly serve him? Like in the sense like if like slave would serve the king, would that relationship, would that really apply if you take that analogy and apply it to the reality? A created being can truly serve God in the sense that like a slave serving the king? So then there must be something different there, like when you say serving God. Like there must be something more than just like what we understand in the everyday usage of the word.
So what's it like exactly that gives you meaning? I'm just curious about that.
Like that's why I especially said like I didn't even use the serving. I said like the gist of the worship is realizing of your own impotence, and through that understanding the greatness of the creator or absoluteness of the creator, and relying on that source, like that you are a beloved guest of a creator who is merciful and who brings everything about like according to his measure and his justice. So there are two different like worldviews, two different perspectives that you can live with. So that to me that is the really the core of the worship. And when it comes to like putting in that understanding in practice, this is since we are forgetful, we just like we are heedless. We get heedless in like many occasions in life. When this becomes like a more structured way, like this is just the moment that you just remind yourself again to bring yourself in consciousness of that like reality.
Can I jump in real quick? So, I mean, it makes, I wouldn't say complete, but it makes sense to me when I think of it, you know, based off of everyone's comments so far, and in the interest of tying it to the same analogy, if I have a seed in my hand and I ask anyone, like, what is this? And a very obvious response would be, it's a seed. And if I respond back with saying, no, it's not, it's a flower, but it's at an early stage, right? It's just, it hasn't reached, quote unquote, its potential yet. And I guess because we know that, that the seed will turn into a flower based off of other evidences or experiences from around us, that answer becomes understandable. It's like, okay, I get it. It is a seed, but it's also a flower at its early stage. As long as the seed is in the right environment, exposed to sunlight, water, has all its nutrients, minerals and everything, it will eventually turn out to be a flower. It becomes very understandable. But in this process, to understand or to look at that seed as a flower in its early stage, what you're really doing is you're acknowledging all the evidences that are at hand, right? That you're working with, and you're saying, okay, because I know that this seed can turn into a flower because I've seen other seeds turn into a flower, this seed is in its existence is a flower in its early stage. Now, to tie this into my own existence as a human being, if someone says, oh, you're just a material being, you're just your whatever, your consciousness and everything, so on and so forth, is completely like just material existence, and it's confined to the boundaries of this universe. And I think, again, emphasis on the word of acknowledgement, which I guess what I'm interpreting from Osman's comment earlier, worship, right? It's really acknowledgement. It's understanding that, what, the seed itself does not have the ability to grow into a flower. The seed is in need of following its course of action, aka the valuable program. The seed needs to deal with its members in order to fully eventually turn into a flower. So just like that, as a human being, if I am, again, acknowledging, not because, because for the sake of acknowledgement, but through realization, through understanding that, what, I do not have the ability to grow. I find myself with these immaterial members, such as the next day, such as the next moment, which I do not control, I do not bring into existence. So something is. And whoever it is that's, quote unquote, watering me, providing me with the sunlight as a human being, providing me with these opportunities to, again, acknowledge my existence, through that realization, in my opinion, again, is able to say, what, no, I'm not just a material being, like through the similar, I guess, method of realization. And for me, to answer, the two questions that were asked earlier, one is like, what does it mean to be a flower? Again, is to understand that I'm not just a seed. So by understanding that you're not just a seed, you accept the possibility that you are something beyond that. And there's, again, enough evidence for my own existence to say I am not just a seed. I'm not just a material being. And the second question, which was, what does it mean for world of similitudes and, I guess, the intermediate realm? Trying to remember what I understood from it earlier was, again, I think that moment of realization, that moment of acknowledgement, where you're no longer, I guess, reducing your existence to just a seed or to just a material being, or within, just a universal thing, or confined to the boundaries of this universe. That moment, quote unquote, God is splitting the seed grain. God is, I guess, creating everything for me to acknowledge and make that distinction to distinguish my existence from what I was perhaps limiting it to what it is or can be in its entirety.
And I just wanted to address some of the few things that Qasim said and others have said. First, to who said that when I forget, I think was it Musa said that do you find meaning in, I don't know exactly what you said, meaning in believing or meaning in a God or
so to make it, I guess, because I'm just trying to understand it better, because I understand how we can't find meaning in this world, I guess, because materialistically everything is just leaving us, and it's very contradictory to try to find meaning in it. But then I'm just trying to understand why it's so clear that there's meaning in worship, or how do we find the meaning there? Like, is it because, I mean, what is the answer? That's kind of what I was asking.
So I at least to separate the two issues. One, I think maybe the logic is a little turned upside down or backwards, in that meaning is the means to acknowledge the necessary existence of a necessarily existent one. One cannot speak of meaning and the creator independent of each other. That's why, I mean, not to go as a totally different subject, but the angelic realm. Or in other words, one knows of him because of meaning. That's why he is necessary. He is a necessary being because there is meaning. It speaks to a creator who brings this world into existence as a message, or as a book to be read. So if you understand it from that perspective, and then I think that may help clarify the issue. And then I think Osman and Qasim answered really that second aspect. Maybe if using the word purpose or objective in one's existence, that might be help distinguish it between meaning. I would maybe say it as, what is the objective in man's existence, or the purpose in man's existence? Not only is it the first step is to know meaning, but to know what that meaning means. In that, what Osman was saying, that you are contingent or impotent, and that you can only be by complete reliance upon the creator of the universe, and that he is taking care of you. That is, I would say, the objective. And that comes from understanding the meaning of the universe. That's how I would probably phrase that sort of relationship. I don't know if that helps clarify the issue, but that's how I think of it as. So I don't think you can speak of meaning in worship. No, worship is the expression of one's understanding of the meaningful aspect of the universe. So that to me is how I understand that. And then with regards to the questions of what is world of similitudes and the intermediate realm, what I take from that is that, back to Osman was asking whether one can, what does that mean really? Does it something to be seen in a hereafter, or after death, or after departure from this existential realm or mode of being? Or I think Nursi, the way he phrases it is he speaks to everyone, one who may understand it at different levels. And I think here, world of similitudes, from what I take from it, is that one can experience two aspects of the universe, as was pointed out many times earlier: the egoistic aspect of the universe, or man's egoistic perspective of the universe, or its meaningful aspect. And in understanding, so the similarity lies in one's using the universe. So the world of similitude to me would be the perspective or experience in which one uses or utilizes the universe in connecting it to a divine source. So, for example, I eat an apple and I connect. So the similitude would be two people are eating the apple. The egoistic man would say, I am eating the apple for my hunger's sake, for survival's sake, for taste's sake, for satisfaction's sake. That would be one aspect. And then the other aspect would be the man who believes and says, I eat this apple and I know I must be given the need to eat and the need to be satisfied and the fact I am satisfied. And that's given by the creator of the whole universe. That's the world of similitude. And that one experiences in this world. The point of departure being the universe itself. And one can also experience the intermediate realm, as Barakan was saying. You know, when you go and you die, you essentially, your body becomes soil again. But what remains is meaning. In other words, like the human spirit remains the meaningful aspect of a thing. And you experience that in this world. You can experience the meaningful aspect of the intermediate realm in this world itself because you're in connection and communication with, this book of the universe. So you never lose that. It's not something that is different. It's that the universe is a place of instruction that educates you on both the apparent aspect of a thing and the inner aspect of a thing. Or, the Quran says, Zahir wa batin, I mean, the outward and the inward. And this is what the world of similitude and the intermediate realm to me is, at least what that one can experience in this life.
Thank you. And I agree with everything that has been said.
May I add or just
Yes.
speculate?
No speculation.
No speculation. So I think this is, I should be going through, first I am a seed, then I'm going to be in the world of similitudes, then I'm going to be in paradise. So the way I understand this is, in my perception, initially I am strong. The strength belongs to me. Then in the next step, I am starting to think that the Creator is strong and the strength in me is manifestation of His strength. So I am starting to understand that He is strong because I am strong. Or with my strength, I know His strength. So I am now starting to imagine that my existence is a example, similitude of His existence. But eventually, this is an intermediate step in my understanding of the Maker. But at the end, I am saying that no, everything is His. I am coming to a point that I am now getting rid of all my claims of ownership, even on my existence. Then I come to the eternal aspect of the existence and say that everything is His, or His manifestation directly. So there is no I versus Him, or up to here it is mine, from there on His, because this is an intermediate level of understanding, which is an intermediate realm for me up until I arrive to the paradise. So for any name, any manifestation, initially I am a seed, then I am being in this intermediate realm. Let's say at a part of my life, my understanding of mercy is just like a seed. Eventually, for the name of mercy, I am getting into an intermediate realm and into this world of similitudes in which I am thinking that the manifestation on me is not really manifestation, but I am somewhat merciful, but I also acknowledge the merciful one as well. Still, there is some share in me than the rest is his. But as I recognize that everything is his, meaning that I am giving the initial part that I reserved for myself to him entirely, and realizing that this transitory existence is actually the manifestation of an eternal one, then I now step into the paradise for the name of merciful. Maybe tomorrow another process will start for me. This time I'm going to start learning about the provider. So for this name again, I am a seed, then I'm going to get into an intermediate realm of me, then it will take me to paradise. So intermediate meaning that between this world and my perception of paradise, it's an intermediate realm. So it spans everything in between. And it's a world of similitudes because initially I was taking the material as the existence. Then now, if you like, it's getting thinner and thinner.
Ascending
to the divine name. In between the absolute divine name and the very matter, very dark matter, in between the two, there are different layers and layers of metaphors or symbols or concepts in my mind, which is being the world of similitudes, as far as I understand it here. So I am being in the world of similitudes, or I am opening up those branches and buds in the world of similitudes. But once I get to paradise, metaphorically speaking, it is being the fruit. This is the ultimate goal, to get into there. So throughout your life, we are going to be in all those stages continuously. So this is what I understand from intermediate realm. So it is in between two, beginning and end. So yesterday and today and tomorrow, still there is this, today is an intermediate between yesterday and tomorrow. And in terms of my understanding or levels of my belief, the belief that I have today is an intermediate step between yesterday and tomorrow.
Like you undergo like that process if you enter the teaching of Quran.
Of Quran, then also under the soil of worship. It's important to take the soil of worship because now under the soil of worship, as I am covering up myself, I am saying that I'm not claiming existence now. I am voluntarily rotting, if you like, by taking the earth on me, saying that I am nothing, I'm not claiming any existence, whatever. And earth is something that's not going to give you life.
Can we say that, like, in a way, actually, you are resetting yourself to where you came from, like, in terms of your bodily existence?
Yeah. Because if you, for example, if you were to claim existence, what would you do? You would go on top of a mountain or a high place and shout, I am here, whatever. He's saying that, no, go under the earth. So metaphorically, going under the earth means you are voluntarily saying that I don't exist, or not necessarily exist, but I'm not owning any...
I don't have independent existence.
Yes, yes. So voluntarily, if you do that, then he's going to take you out of the earth. So applying the analogy to the tomato seed, I put the tomato seed under the earth, pour water on it. So in my case, yes, now I need to, with free choice, as Asim was also mentioning, with my free choice, I am saying that I am now entering under the earth, meaning that accepting the state of being a worshipper myself. I do not have an independent existence by myself. This is what I'm getting under the earth means. Then he is going to take you out of, if I arrive to this level of a perception understanding, then he will take me out of this earth, and then I will start flourishing into different perceptions, eventually arriving to his names totally. Because I was trying to see how does the first two paragraphs relate to with the rest of it. Because especially in the second paragraph of the text, he was talking about human's second aspect, in which human is immense, but it's all about with his poverty. So being poverty and being immense. Now in the third paragraph, he starts talking about human being created as a seed, given a lot of qualities. So I was struggling with what it means. In the second, you said you are, with your immense poverty, you are important. In the third one, you start saying that you are given a lot of qualities and you should use them in a proper way. So there was an imbalance. But I guess this entering under the earth of worshipping is what makes the balance between the first paragraph and the second.
I think it
paragraph.
also goes back to the mirror example that we talked about last week. So you can use it like immense poverty or impotence as a mirror to reflect the qualities of the creator, and like assent to, by like clinging onto those names, those qualities, you can ascend to the level of the, not level, to the creator in your understanding that like each of those qualities coming from a source that is not from you. So like it is like you need it, like just like the mirror, like in order to reflect the light in the mirror, you also need that nature of you that is completely impotent and poverty in order to reflect the qualities that he's talking about in the following paragraph.
Yeah. So the false image in me that says I have those qualities is needed to be put under the soil, and the only thing that is left is I am impotent, I am needy, and there is a provider which is going to split the seed and take me out of here, this seed position.
Like that reminds me of like something that is actually related to your question, like why like one is meaningful and the other one is not. That was the question, right? Or how do you see like meaning in God and not other stuff? So I think that kind of takes some like internal reflection to really like locate ourselves somewhere in the like creation. If we really come to the conclusion that, for example, like, can you really like, do you have any control over on like power of your sight?
No.
Can you really make yourself see? Can you really make yourself hear? So like those are the like some of the like more, I would say, physical qualities that we have, but we have no control over. And that automatically tells us that like actually you are impotent in terms of like having those like, or like not, we don't even know how like those qualities like operate in the body. So like on one hand, like this is who we are. On the other hand, we want to enjoy all the beauty in the world. And when it comes to like a situation that like you don't no longer have the like power of sight to be able to enjoy, that's where the contradiction is. On one hand, like you want to enjoy it and you are like you have that like desire for it. On the other hand, like you are completely impotent. So no matter like on day-to-day basis, no matter how many different like things that you can enjoy in life, you are subjected to change, and like in the course of time, like your power of sight is like decaying, or like you are losing it. So like how can you really say that there is some like meaning in that, like that is satisfying for the human senses? Like if you really think about it, it's actually like it seems like it is a setup, it is a design, almost like some sort of, it's a new like word that I like learned. It's like almost like a maze that you are trying to figure out like your way, but like at the same time that system is designed to torture you. That's how it feels like to me.
Yeah, I was while Yusuf was speaking, looking up what the use of I don't know what the translation in Turkish is for intermediate realm, but I'm guessing barzakh are to some some derivative of that. And in the Quran, it's talking about a partition or a barrier before resurrection. And maybe the same thing that Yusuf said are a little different. The partition being the apparent nature of the universe, that one still sees the world apparently, even though they believe, they still see the apparent reality of things. And the objective, or the highest form of the human being, is to be witness towards the vision of God, or to have a vision of God, or as Yusuf was saying, to perceive immediately as one sees something to be the divine absolute reality, which I think all people, all scholars and saints have attempted to do, and that would be, I guess, the world of similitude, and the partition being what is the apparent nature of reality. That is what is, in a way, a veil to that reality.
I would assume that I'm a bit of a mathematical person. So I was trying to figure out if there was like an analogy that, or an example perhaps, that would fit to this, again, that would kind of summarize what we've read. The only thing I could think of from the most simplest example is, it's kind of like an analogy / example, but if I say that, okay, I start off with just my most basic reality, and that is I exist. And from an analogy perspective, let's say that is the number 2, and I just write down the number 2 on a piece of paper. The next thing that I guess become aware of is the order of the universe, right? Like order that I am subjected to, the transienceness of this life, everything. And let's say on a piece of paper, I now add a plus sign, right? Like which from an analogy perspective for me means like, okay, it's an order. It's establishing an equation, if you will. And through my awareness, through my reality, and understanding the order that I find myself with, I, whether through the process of negation or through understanding and gathering evidence, I come to the conclusion that there is a source behind it, and like you said, Sohail, earlier, the meaning, and that perhaps the creator or the source are not completely independent, in the sense that it is, if I might be injecting this or my understanding into this, is that it's essentially serving a similar purpose. And on the piece of paper, I add now this other, let's say, 2, right? This understanding, this a more, I guess, comprehensive as well as broader understanding of my reality. And again, as the paragraph suggested, this intermediate realm for me is that equal sign. So now I have this 2, which is my reality, plus the order, plus the other 2, which is my understanding of my existence hopefully in its entirety. And at that point, the moment you have that equal sign there as well, that intermediate stage, the 4 does not need to necessarily even be on the paper for you to know that it exists, or that it has an existence, that 2 plus 2 will always, under any circumstances, no matter what happens, will equal to 4. Just as how I think that seed, as long as it is watered, as long as it obeys the order that it's subjected to, it will turn into a flower. And I think, I can make sense of that personally for myself. Hopefully I'm not confusing any one of you guys. Is that at that stage, as the author says, produces branches and buds, like it hasn't fully turned into a tree. The number 4 has not been printed on the piece of paper, but one can with certainty say that that 2 + 2 will always equal to 4, or that I will, quote unquote, experience the innumerable perfections and bounties in paradise. Obviously it's a loaded statement, requires its own understanding of almost each and every word, but that's how I can make sense of it, and at least for myself with certainty say that this is how it must be, so there's no other option left.
That equation example I like, because in the I think if you go to I was just looking, I think it's verse 20 or chapter 23 verse 100, about a barrier being between that and resurrection. And if you think about it, like you said, equal sign, it's a dimensionless aspect to a thing. You can't speak of a space-time dimension. So in a sense, the intermediate realm, as I take it, it's the infinitesimally smallest moment that you exist in, and it's your determination at that point, like you said, an equal sign. How do you see the world? And then if you see the world as being an opening to the divine names, and you see his act of creation taking place, God is the splitter, as he says, then the world of similitudes opens up right after the equal sign. Not after, temporally speaking, but it's immediate in a sense. And that is when you experience, in a sense, the resurrection in every moment. And then you begin to see how it's not the world coming into existence. It's a manifestation of his names that are taking place and being renewed. And you can have, and that's what you see in every moment.
May I say something? Just a small addition. With the example, the equal sign for, I guess there's a little, at least from my understanding, there's a little danger there, because when you talk about 2 + 2 = 4, you're assuming that you know what is after the equal sign, right? You already know that it is 4. But with the intermediate realm, and what Yusuf said and what others said, I guess there is I don't want to say uncertainty, but there is an acknowledgement there, saying there is something beyond what I experienced so far. I guess this acknowledgement is saying that I'm in the intermediate realm. There is something more to come. Before that point, so going back to the paragraph, I really want to highlight the recipe he gives. He says, through the water of Islam and the comments of the Quran. So the state we are in is, we realize that there is something, right, that we experience, but then we surrender, like the water of the Islam. We surrender to the fact that it is not me doing all these things, or it is not itself, it's not causes, it's not nature, whatever. There is a God, the absolute God that creates things. There's an absolute God that splits the sea, right? The water of Islam, the surrendering to the fact. And then realizing that you need a guidance from the creator, from the maker, to interpret things, to make sense of things. And through this guidance, you reach this world of similitudes, as Yusuf was saying, the names of the Creator. Once you acknowledge the existence of the Creator, once you acknowledge the guidance of the Creator, and once you realize that the creation is nothing but the speech of the Creator, then only thing you see is the names of the Creator. Everything becomes a similitude, everything becomes an example of the names, qualities of the Creator. But then you say that, yes, this is like now you experience a new world, a new existence. You say it's not like the world I experienced before, right? Before you were just seeing the seed, the tomato, the water, whatever. But now you're seeing the glory, power, wisdom, right? You living in the world of similitude. And then you realizing that there's even beyond that. Like everything was taking a point, like through the progress, through your realizing your weakness. You reach a point, and then from this point you say there must be something beyond, because you're talking about an absolute creator. There must be something beyond. There must be a new form. Like, I guess that's the reason he's talking about the intermediate realm, which is usually associated with the resurrection. So with the resurrection, I guess one aspect is you transform from one form to another form. And between these two forms, like you waiting to the second form to come. You say, okay, there must be something beyond that. There will be something beyond that. Yes, in this sense, yes, there's a certainty. You know that there is something to come. There will be something beyond that. There will be a new understanding of the reality. But there is also a kind of uncertainty, or there is kind of unseen, which waiting for you. So yeah, maybe there's an equal sign. You are on top of this equal sign, but you're not. I'm not sure that you can say that it is 4. Otherwise, I wouldn't call it as an intermediate realm, because if it is 4, it is nothing different than 2. I don't know if it makes sense, but I guess the key point here is once you realize that the absolute creator is behind everything, and everything you experience is nothing but the manifestations of the names, then you realize that there must be something more. There must be something beyond. Yes, this understanding of the reality, this world, transformed into something very beautiful. But even more something more beautiful is waiting for me, which is paradise. Again, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be something come in afterlife. But even in this world, it should be something more. It should be something beyond your current understanding of the reality, even if it is spent by the names of the God. That's all I want to say.
How about if we call it an infinite sum series or an integral? Would that be more appropriate?
Yeah, I think I agree. Definitely analogies could be troublesome if not understood correctly, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I think the point that I was trying to highlight with the 4, just to kind of add some context, was the certainty in the existence of a result, that something becomes so clear, so apparent that you know there is a result. But yeah, definitely I think the infinity would have been a more accurate analogy or example. All right, so with that being said, I know we are out of time, and we didn't really get to discuss the town examples. So maybe we could pick up on that next time.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين الفاتحة